Hi then, welcome to Cold Heart's Descent into Madness whilst trying to complete Talisman's Cyanide challenge. Now, if you don't know, I'm part of a competition Talisman's was set up doing simple challenges for SpaceChem because why not? And he set the challenge of getting cyanide from one input area to the diagonally opposite output area. Simple enough, and the most simplest solution for this is to have both bonders going around as a pair, picking up and dropping off the cyanide. Nice, simple, and slow. 71 cycles. And his previous challenge was doing oxygen where one bonder couldn't go over the output area and another bonder couldn't go over the input area. And this is the kind of solution I'd had for oxygen with this extra constraint. Not a constraint in the game itself, just of the challenge Talisman has set up. And so both of them are quite happily handing over, and it's at 72 cycles, so it's slightly slower than the large loops. However, of course, it can be improved. Now, the wonderful thing about cyanide, and again with oxygen to an extent, but we had more bonders for oxygen, is that nitrogen can have 5 bonds, carbon can have 4. This allows us to bond cyanide together so that every time we move them, we're not just moving one at a time, we're moving an entire chain of them at a time. And here's a little simple for loop I set up to do just that. It just goes around, bonds nitrogen and then unbonds it to output it over here. And even this solution, 56 cycles, is quite an improvement because you're not waiting as much. It's basically you've got you're outputting every 4 cycles for this solution, whereas with this solution, whilst you've got 2 6 loops working together, you're outputting every about 8 cycles. Now that's a for loop, but what we can do is make both Woldals work together, and so whilst you're now doing a larger loop, they're both working on the loop rather than one just adding in a few extra symbols. So you're outputting every 3 cycles. Much better. And that comes in at 44 because you're outputting every 3 cycles. It still takes a bit of time to get going because you've got to start building the chain, but it's pretty fast. It's working every 3 cycles, you're outputting. However, that can be improved. And yeah, this sort of came as a bit of inspiration for me, is that what if one Waldo just builds the start of the snake until it can start outputting, at which point you're then doing the exact same thing, only the cycles going in the opposite direction this time round, and you're outputting over here as well, because before it was down there. And yeah, that shaves off 6 cycles in total. 3 of them because you're not building up. This is happening every 2 cycles rather than 3 cycles, and also this loop here, because you're outputting higher up, you're saving a slightly larger amount of time when you're doing that loop. It's only really at the start and the end you're shaving off a few cycles, but yeah, overall, I mean, if I move this up here. Yeah, so now they're in sync. Yeah, that itself is 41, which was an improvement over the first 6 loop I showed. And then you save another 3 off by just having it chain along. However, that wasn't the winning submission. The winning submission was this monstrosity, where you build up a 5 long cyanide chain and then drag it over to the output area. And yeah, it just goes, right, then you need 10 output. I'll get 10 input and bring them over. Simple as 22 cycles. That's like a third of the time of the original solution I showed. And yeah, at every single point along this line, red and blue are doing something. Up till the very end where blue just hits that point and goes, right then, the only thing I've got to do now is output. So I'll just stay here and output and wait for red to catch up. And if you noticed, there was one cycle. Yeah, there's that one cycle where blue's got to drop what it's holding, otherwise it can't output it. But everything else is just breaking up and outputting constantly. But chatting to Telesemancer about these solutions, we went, well, is it that solution for the 5 chain, the 2 chains of 5, that terminates, that once it's finished, it's finished. It doesn't loop anymore. What if we had 30 outputs? And so he sent me the code to do 30 outputs. What's that one? That's not a 4 chain. Oh yes, that's... Yeah, I call this a 5 chain. Now, this is outputting every 3 cycles. And it's doing the exact same thing as before, but it's now doing it 30 times. That brings us with, if you think about it, 30 times cycle of 3 plus 8 for the initial setup period gives us 98 output, 98 cycles. Now I thought, what if I did the cyanide chain but with 4? So what? Initially I was doing 5, I thought I'd try do 4. Maybe because this overall loop's shorter, 4 is an awkward number for 30 outputs. But the principle is there, and also if there's only 1 cycle, it's not doing anything. That only gets us to 74. It's still an improvement over the 6 loop. And then there's my original version, which all I did was, rather than blue hammering away at outputs there, it just carries on up and then back to its input area. And red likewise loops straight back up. But this time there's quite a gap where they're not doing anything. There's this bit of red line here, this blue line here. 76 again. It's like, okay, can I improve on that? And apparently, yes, I can. Which is basically, this is the 4 loop, 4 chain, extended, so you're now doing 5. And again, you only need 1 cycle where it's not doing anything. You're also doing it in a slightly different order. Because if you notice, this gets left here for a while. However, it doesn't make a difference because, as you can see, the puzzle is finished once this 5 chain is handed in, and it ends as soon as it's dropped. For 69. This is a solution which is 3 times faster than the original solution I showed for you for Cyanide. So the original Cyanide solution, which was 10 outputs, took 71 cycles. This is doing 30 outputs at 69 cycles. And I'm just going to run again because it's using bonder priority to the maximum. Blue is going straight in there to grab. First thing blue does, it grabs. And it's going to be there because the first thing red does is inputs. And then red inputs a load more stuff. And unfortunately, there's really little time for adjustment to this. Because yeah, when either one is picking up, the other one is inputting, or has inputted. I mean, it may be adjustable if red started up here, then that. But now what? Red's won over. So that bond needs to be there. But it can't be there because it's got to pick up there. Because normally when that starts down there, it's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inputs. Blue's going input, pick up, bond, 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 bond. So it's there, red's there, red then goes, I take a breathe, blue moves down to here. Now actually this input is, you could have it on either one of these two. These two cycles is when the other one is twisting, because when you're playing, red Roldo's there, blue Roldo's there. Red Roldo moves on, blue Roldo's only twisted, and he turned this chain over. It hasn't actually moved from the spot, at which point both of these are effectively free spaces for the other Roldo to do what it can do in that short amount of time. However, as soon as red gets there, it needs to be outputting. Well, it needs to be unbonding, so that when blue hits the output, it's got a free molecule. And again there, it needs to have unbonded to have released that one. If you push, it comes here, blue's dropping. And red's picking up, you can't really adjust that. So yeah, there is Cyanide 30 outputs using a loop creating 5 long cyanide chains. Yeah, that was an interesting challenge to do. I hope you enjoyed watching this. This is some of the weird and wonderful things you can do in SpaceChem. And thank you for watching.